I've spent the last decade using Android, and to be totally honest, as much as it can get on my nerves, as much as it can get in the way, it's the OS I keep coming back to, and there are so many reasons why this is the best mobile OS. So here is why I love Android. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas and I love Android. It's my favorite mobile operating system. My first taste of Android was with the Orange San Francisco, which ran 2.2 Froyo and was quite honestly not a very good experience, but it was my entry point. It had laggy menus, a bad camera, and would be considered absolutely puny by today's standards. I eventually moved on to the legendary Nexus 4 built by LG, as many of you know, which many more of you would have actually heard of thanks to its gorgeous display and a design that I just sort of fell in love with. In fact, the screen was so much sharper and weirdly wider than I was used to compared to the Orange phone. It's very strange. That device also introduced me to custom software on my phone, because when Lollipop came out and I couldn't get the over-the-air update, me and a friend stayed up all night manually flashing Lollipop to our phones. From there, I used heaps of different models from LG, HTC, Sony, Samsung, Google, Huawei, Oppo, Honor, OnePlus, ZTE, Xiaomi, Realme, and so many more. Sure, I've dabbled in iPhones down the years and have covered them online, but I always come back to Android. It's allowed me to explore so many different pieces of hardware, differing not only by brand, but by shape, by size, by form factor. And ultimately, Android's flexibility is its biggest pull for me. It means I can try phones with huge screens, crazy cameras, super fast charging, ones with different ports, buttons, and so on. It means that if you want a particular kind of phone, more than likely will run Android and you'll be stuck with that. But that's not a bad thing. And within that, there are so many different flavors of Android to choose from, not like iOS where it's just iOS. You have One UI that has DeX, excellent information density, Pixel Experience that's supported for a super long time and gives you a rich array of first-party AI tools on top. ColorOS and OxygenOS's Game Boost might be the best version of that particular feature I've ever used, though generally they aren't supported for as long. They're still great options though. And if you don't want first-party options, depending on the hardware and what the bootloader unlock situation is on that phone, you could go and just install custom software, which opens up a huge plethora of different options. Some that prioritize security, some that prioritize customization, some that give you better camera processing, some that minimize everything down to the absolute very basics, and some that add more features than you'd get from an OEM. The community that was built on forums like XDA back in the day that I'm proud to have written for, this was created by passionate technology fans who spent their free time building software, troubleshooting issues, helping one another out, and ultimately creating some superb work, all stemmed from Android and people's intrigue and fascination with it. It's a bit of a tricky thing to get into if you're not particularly technical, but that lends itself to the flexibility of Android because there are so many good devices out there that will feel great out of the box. You never have to touch the different settings or features, which is just great. And a lot of the time, Android gets features before everyone else. So if, like me, you're a bit of an enthusiast and you like to try things out before everyone else, it generally lands on Android first, be that the latest AI features, new camera modes, even hardware implementations that come far sooner than they turn to on, say, Apple phones. Foldables may be the best example of this. If you want either a big foldable or a little flip, right now you're going to have to go Team Green. And there are many different options from Oppo, Huawei, Samsung, Google, and so on. You're not limited to just one kind. I mean, there's even the tri-fold thing, which is kind of nuts. Also, I'd like to point this out. As much as I really do like AirDrop and what it can do within its limited little ecosystem there, Android's file management is just so much better. I mean, that's before you get into the fact you can simply plug your phone into your computer and transfer photos and videos over so much more easily. Really any files, it doesn't have to be photos or videos. You can even use it as like a little removable USB if you need to transfer something temporarily. It's just great. iOS's system by comparison is so finicky, it just always gets on my nerves. And that's not to say that iOS is bad, but I just find myself feeling like Android is more convenient. Think about the best phones to have ever released. What operating system do they run? The HTC One M8, the Galaxy Note 9, the Pixel 2 XL, the Huawei P30 Pro, the OnePlus 7T Pro. Android is the one thing that all of these phones have in common. And that's no coincidence. We wouldn't have had those pioneers, the innovators, the experimentation had Android not been around. Even more obscure phones like the Galaxy camera line, the LG Wing, the Xperia Play, and heaps of other models would not have existed, or if they did, they likely would be far worse without Android. My favourite ever Android probably has to be the Huawei P30 Pro. It offered so much hardware and software, its camera was out of this world, which is no surprise if you know what I look for in a good smartphone. Its battery and charging tech were phenomenal, it came with that ridiculous selection of beautiful colours, they just looked stunning, it was a great device. And I truly believe that there are some seriously underrated Android phones, like the Nexus 6 with its huge display. The OnePlus 3 was also another level from what we'd seen beforehand. The Galaxy S7 Edge was probably the sweet spot, along with the S10e that really gave people what they wanted. And then stuff like the Pixel 5, which is really a flop at the time, but sort of has grown on many since. The Redmi K20 Pro, the Xperia 1 series with its quad DAC, for those audiophiles out there. Look, though I do like to get ahead of myself in these videos, it's always good to remember that companies aren't your friends. They're there to make money out of you ultimately, and so anyone fanboying over a particular operating system or company, blindly shouting nonsense about everything else, is just not anyone worth talking to, if you ask me. If there's something you like, then that's great. But we aren't 12 years old anymore, so let's leave the arguing to other people in the comment sections, people who don't know any better. We had Android 15 with Android 16 due this year, which aside from making me feel incredibly old, is really exciting, especially with some of the more useful and interesting features that we've had more recently on Android, like Circle to Search, Google Gemini, the whole gestured navigation overhaul, and then the first party features like Google's absolutely world-class video boosts, which uses the cloud to process video, Oppo's reflection removal for photos, and the underrated and super useful AI object removal and photo retouching that has basically got all manufacturers creating that kind of thing right now. Android is not perfect. There are certainly bad versions of it, much less so these days compared to way back when, but I do hope we get to see more innovation, improvements, more of a focus on interesting and unique software features going forward that elevate and complement the cutting edge hardware. I've always been more of a hardware guy, and I'm sure those of you who've seen more than one of my videos will know that by now, but that hardware wouldn't be anything without great software. And that's why I love Android. Let me know why you love Android in the comments. Is it because of its flexibility, the different flavors, or is it because you just dislike the alternative so much that you fall on Android by default? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments, the Android police community. And while you're down there, be sure to hit like if you enjoyed today's content and subscribe to never miss another upload. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.